Are you okay now?
Courtney,
Yep.
are the select board and administration here?
Justina is here, Helen is here, Mike is here, Chief Hurley, Polly. I think we're just waiting on Kathleen.
And Dan, Mike, they here?
Mike is here and I'm looking for Dan. I think he should be on soon.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Hey, Helen, since we started early, I know that sometimes you don't raise your hand right. And really, if you bring your cursor or mouse down to the bottom of the screen, and I'm talking to you, Helen.
I do it right every time. I do raise hand. Every
You
time.
have to raise your hand. And you don't
I
have,
do both.
you do both. Okay, okay, good.
But you know something, we only have, Kathleen isn't here. Last Tuesday,
Yeah, you don't have to explain. I didn't know. I thought you were waiting for me to see your hand like this, and that's what I can't see. So that's okay.
no, I know that. But I put it up so the others can see it in case they, for whatever reason, you know, I do both. And I'm sure of that because I can see the little blue hand at the left upper corner. So I do it on the participants list. And thank you, Courtney, for putting this on the, you know, initial page that you see when you come into the Zoom meeting. Anyway, what happened last Tuesday was because of Verizon's delay, and I'm still working with them. It took me, I had tried to get into the meeting for 20 minutes before it, and it was a disaster. And unfortunately, they haven't fixed it yet. So this morning it's working, but that wasn't me confused about technology. That was, it just was frozen. So I apologize for that, but I did try.
No apologies or explanation needed. I just wanted to help you if you didn't know that.
Yes, thank you.
Chief Hurley, did you have something?
Nope, just during opening comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, Kathleen wanted to say something in opening comment. And yesterday at the Cape Cod Selectmen's meeting there, she was having trouble with her technology. So I don't know if she's going to make it on.
She is on.
She is on. Okay, good. Good. I was just looking to see if she wasn't. All right, we have, well, it's 10 o'clock now. So it's now 10 o'clock. I hope everybody is here who needs to be here. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020, and I will open the Select Board meeting with the Emergency Management Task Force team. We'll start with announcements, open sessions, and public comments. Remember, comments need to be brief, and the board cannot deliberate or vote on any matter. Chief Hurley. What just happened?
He's good.
Yeah,
I think I'm unmuted, right, Courtney?
Yep.
All right, thank you. And also thank you, Madam Chair, and to the board. I just have a quick statement this morning, and I apologize. I've typed it out because there's been a lot of emotions running through my head over the past week or so. First and foremost, our hearts go out to the Floyd family and the residents of Minneapolis. The unthinkable actions of these 4 cowardly police officers has shaken the law enforcement community. I am outraged, along with every member of the Wellfleet Police Department, on the unnecessary and brutal death of George Floyd. Since that terrible day, we see and feel the community's pain, outrage, and frustration. This past Sunday, there was a march in remembrance of George Floyd held in town that was thoughtful, respectful, and honored his name. The department wants to thank the organizers for an honest dialogue prior to the march and letting us be part of the solution and not the problem. Prior to the start of the march, 2 of my officers approached me and asked if they could walk with the community in support of denouncing police brutality. Our hearts are broken and pauses us to reflect as a department on our mission of policing with compassion. We take the trust and faith you instill in us very seriously and believe that we need to hold ourselves to the highest standard possible for the community. And just in closing, a quote I heard from a sheriff out in Minnesota. This is the year 2020, and law enforcement across our nation should understand we are the guardians of our community, protectors of our community, we serve our community, and we are nothing without the trust and support of our community. What tragically happened to Mr. Floyd at the hands of those sworn to serve and protect creates a significant hole in the moral fabric of the relationship law enforcement has built with our communities. So I just want to get that out there this morning, community, and thank the board and the town for their continued support years. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Chief, and very well said. And I'm sure you are expressing the sentiment of everybody here. Anyone else have a comment or announcement?
Yep, we have a few. I'll let Kathleen Bacon go next.
Okay. Unmute.
She is unmuted.
Good morning. I just want to remind people that applications for absentee or mail-in voting can be found at the post office. They are on the counter just as you walk through the door. These can be filled out and turned into the clerk's office, and a ballot will be sent to you. Wellfleet special election is June the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Silverman.
Yes, good morning. I'd be very brief. I was going to say something about Sunday, but Chief Hurley said most of what I was going to say. I just want to say that I have never been prouder to live in Wellfleet than I was on Sunday when a couple of hundred people came out in support of peace and justice. And we had the support and active participation of a police department who understands community policing. So kudos to the community, and extra kudos to Chief Hurley and the men and the women of their department who not only made it possible, but showed that they understand and actively support the cause that was being discussed. Thank you so much, Chief, to the men and women of your department.
Okay, Lily Green. Go ahead, Lily.
Okay, thank you. As you know, I echo the sentiments expressed. And also, I just wanted to say at this time that I am the assembly delegate for Wellfleet. If there is something that you see that I can support your efforts with, the select board or the town departments through an ordinance at the county level or a letter even, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
And Helen.
Yes, I've said this before, but it needs to be repeated, and it would be great if it was on the first page of the town website. Tick season is in full swing. Many diseases can be gotten from ticks, and we have free testing in Wellfleet, and there is particular attention to tick-borne diseases right now, because when people get them, they often go in and there's such attention on COVID that there can be a misdiagnosis at times. And therefore, it's important to test the tick, not wait to test the human. The tests on humans are less accurate. So once again, if you're in Wellfleet, you can get a free tick test. It's now only posted on the town conservation website. Department.
No,
Thank you.
Helen, it is on the town website under news. You have to hit view all. We have a lot of news items lately, but it's in the tick test. It's there.
That's excellent. It would be great if it was visible on the first page, but
We have a
anyway, thank
lot.
you.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
that's all I see, Janet.
Thank you. So moving on, we're gonna go, pretty much this whole meeting will be updates on COVID and what's going on. And Chief Polly has to leave early, so I'm gonna take the fire department out of order and let him go first. Is Chief Polly there? Ready to go? There you are.
Good morning. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As you have in your packet, I put together an email with an article also with respect to expansion or creation of outdoor dining spaces during the COVID-19 state of emergency. I'm going to be very brief. Having done some research on this, I think that I'd like the board to approve my email that I sent to you for two reasons. One, that it will allow for expansion of outdoor seating in restaurant establishments, and that can be done efficiently, effectively with a oversight of myself, or not the, I should say the oversight, but with the inspections of myself, the police chief, the health officer, and the building inspector. And I think this would allow to help business owners decrease their inside capacity and density, and have some of that those numbers transfer to the outdoor dining areas that could be created where safe and possible. And I think it'll help the businesses hopefully have somewhat of a successful season, as well as improve public health conditions. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you. So were you saying that you wanted us to make a motion to approve this, or I want to discuss it first, but was that your desire? Or did I just misunderstand you?
Yes, I'd like to certainly have the board discuss it with the emergency management team, but I believe there is in your packet a
Yeah, there's a
motion
motion.
for approval.
Okay.
Janet, Kathleen here.
Okay.
I've got my hand up.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, may I? We just learned late yesterday afternoon that the ABCC has been given a waiver or an executive order by the governor, so that we are able to expand the service of alcohol sales off the footprint of the restaurants into other areas or expanded patios. So I would move that we're good to go with this. I think that the chief has been thinking about it, as well as myself and many of the restaurant owners. We've had mail from Allison Hester at the Pearl, Mac Hay, and I think that now that the ABC is giving a waiver to allow this to be done, I think we're good to go. So
I think I think we still have to wait for Governor Baker to confirm that on June 8th, restaurants can do this. Am I right?
no, it was confirmed yesterday.
No, no, not about the alcohol, but that restaurants can open an outside seating
Seating.
area.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, so there's, Hillary, you had your hand up? Were you gonna say yes?
Sorry, I was gonna say we do have to wait for the governor's guidance to allow outdoor dining before we can allow that locally. But once we get that green light, we're ready to go.
So Chief Polly, I really like the everything you put in here. And I think we could accept it today, but that we may want to modify it when the governor comes out in case there's some additional guidelines. And this is the perfect opportunity to mention to businesses. There is one business in particular who's gotten a lot of complaints because they have already gone ahead and got their outdoor seating and awning and tables and cordoned off. And they are really in violation of use of town property to begin with. And then they're also in violation that they have to get permits for all of this stuff. So, you know, I know everybody wants to be ready, but you're way too early. Anybody else have a comment?
Yes, Chief Hurley has his hand up.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate it. I just want to echo also what the fire chief said, and Kathleen said it well too. With the guidance that came out from ABCC and the governor yesterday, the board, who is the liquor license of alter or change licensing without the approval of the ABC, but that come November 1st, 2020, that will be rescinded, if not sooner, back to their original license. So I think what the fire chief and team is looking to do is to expedite this process to get these businesses open ASAP, so we can with the summer. Thank you.
So Chief, you want us to put these into effect as of tomorrow rather than waiting for the governor? Chief Polly.
Let me find him.
Is that what I'm hearing from Chief Hurley?
Madam Chair, it's Chief Polly. What my intention here is, certainly we will go with the governor's guidance, but I'd like to have a system, if you will, in place, whereas the board starts to receive these requests from business owners, from restaurants and so forth, that we can go get up and running as part of the approval process. It gives the local emergency management team 5 days to do a site visit. Again, my goal here is to allow or to provide as much support to these businesses so that they can get up and running just as soon as the state gives the green light.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, and I just misunderstood Chief Hurley thinking that he wanted it as soon as possible. So yeah, I would encourage every business, not just restaurants, because businesses are going to have to be approved with a safety guidelines also, that everybody, if you've got a plan, I know every restaurant has been working on it and they've been doing takeout, get your seating plan approved, but then it does have to come before the select board. And especially if you want your liquor license, that all has to come before us. So start the process, but don't expect you to start serving out there yet. Okay. Anyone else?
Yep, we have Mike and then Helen, and then Hillary has her hand up again. So we'll let Mike go.
Okay.
Hi. So yeah, I think this is an obvious thing to do. It will make things safer as far as restaurant capacity and the ability for the restaurants to serve the public, and hopefully improve their business capabilities as well. And what we're approving here is that, you know, if we were to approve this, is that businesses could request the new expanded outdoor seating, and it must be made in writing to the select board. So I think we can approve this today without any problem, because there's still a process going forward. This doesn't actually approve the plan that a restaurant may have, but it puts in place the framework to do so. So I think I have no problem, you know, having a vote on this now. We may want to put in this motion that it will be within the framework of the governor's guidelines on reopening restaurants, or some language like that. Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer, and we should really move on this.
So Kathleen, do you want to, does anybody else want to add something new?
Helen hasn't gone yet, so.
Go ahead, Helen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. There are two places to unmute. I want to be sure I got the right one.
I'm
So
on-
through you to Hillary, I have two questions and then I'm going to say something after you answer them because it depends what I'm going to say. How many restaurants do we have right now that would come under this change? In other words, how many restaurants do we have?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but about 3 handfuls. I mean, and I think it would apply to every restaurant we have in town, which we don't have that many.
Right, so it might be, I used to know this number, but it can change from year to year. It might be 15, it might be 12, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, how many of those restaurants would be looking to have outdoor tables on town property? I believe only one, but you would know better.
Well, I don't know about on town property. I think those with parking lots would rather have their outdoor dining area in close proximity to their actual restaurant with their kitchen space. So maybe the folks that would want to have dining on town hall or on town property might be Bowl, maybe Max, the Pearl, possibly the bookstore. Maybe no, because there's no town property over there. That might be it. We really don't have a lot of restaurants that abut town property where it would make sense.
Okay, thank you. My comment then in response to that is, we have to be sure that when we get these requests to be able to have seating outdoors as a licensing board, that is noted on the request, on the application. And that we have to remember that we have said you can't use town property through 2020 and that exception gets noted so that it all feels legal to them. The second thing is, and I was going to bring this up later, I'm very concerned that staff in these restaurants, of course, get protected. And bathrooms and the hygiene protocol for bathrooms, which I'm sure the health department will be all over, in other words, monitoring, is, I think, the place that is of most concern to me. I'm all for this happening. It makes complete sense for everybody's sake. But typically, at least one person at a table will use the bathroom in the restaurant. And that puts a lot more work on the restaurant owner. But through you again, Janet, to Hillary, given how many restaurants there are, how are you planning? And this has to do with the outdoor seating really also. How are you planning, the health department with only 2 employees? How are you planning to be able to keep on top of that? What's your thought about it?
Their restroom sanitation, is that the piece?
Yes.
So part of their restroom sanitation goes along with their COVID-19 workspace protocols, and that is separate from 590, which is the food code. So the guidance from the state is that we do not have to follow up on their COVID-19 protocols. If there's a complaint, we can. If we have cause for concern, we can. If we're there on a routine inspection, we can ask questions, we can look. But the COVID-19 protocols are different than the 590, and the COVID-19 protocols don't require inspections.
Thank you. I'm sure different restaurant owners will want to be dealing with that, if only for their staff, who also use the bathrooms. Okay, and then of course I'm going to bring up the other thing, which is I'm hoping this in no case will tempt restaurant owners to expand the number of seats they have, because the groundwater needs to be protected. And I rest assured, just because of our wonderful health conservation department, that will be paid attention to, that when people set up their outdoor seating, that somebody from the health department will go out and count seats. Because people need the business and they need to be able to keep their pumps primed as restaurant owners, and I'm all for this. But I really do not want it to have a negative impact on the groundwater. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Should have less of an impact. Because if they do open up, which they probably aren't going to this year, so there's gonna be fewer. So, is Hillary still there? Did she-
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you move spaces. Something that has been mentioned, and I know some restaurants in bigger areas are doing it, is they're doing contact tracing. I think I talked to one restaurant owner about this, that the server has her name on whatever the bill or whatever, but that there is contact information for one person from the party. I don't think you have to go into the names of all the party, but that there's one person with an email, so that should something happen, it would be more easy to do contact tracing. And I don't see that in these guidelines, but I think that's going to be in the governor's guidelines. Any comment on that, Hillary? Or
I don't want to
Jessica?
comment on it. It wasn't in the guidance that came out. That was their preliminary guidance. That may change as we get, the actual, or if more guidance comes down, but that is not part of the requirements at the moment.
Okay. Good idea, though. Good suggestion to all you restaurant owners out there. It would really help if something did happen. Okay, anything else on restaurants, or can we move on to neighboring communities? Oh, go ahead, Hillary.
I just, we had mentioned permitting briefly and that folks must apply for the proper permits. I wondered if it might be a good opportunity to just discuss what those permits are so that the folks listening know what it is they need.
Good idea.
So from my perspective in my department, they have their food service license issued by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. So that's the only permit that would be required through my department. I think Justin is on the line and he can talk about tents.
And seating. Justin, do you want to talk about tents and seating?
Justin, you're muted. I think he has a problem with his microphone because we can't.
Yeah, okay. So he can add to this. I'll start, but anyone like Chief Polly or anybody else who's thought about this, you're going to need to go through the building inspector and have a plan for your outside seating. You're going to have, I don't see here that you have to have a little plan on paper, but it's probably a very good idea to say the number of seats, the space in between the tables, and where the tables are placed. Let's see, what else? A diagram, so it is proposed. You then will, if you already have your liquor license, which most people do by now, I think it would be pretty easy just to sign. We'll get a paper of some sort from the state saying that it's okay to serve alcohol outside. And I will say Provincetown had this, some people in Provincetown had the misinformation that since you could serve alcohol outside, that you could walk up and down the street with it. And that is not legal still. So does Chief Polly, do you have anything to add? I'm quickly looking through your.
So I have a comment.
Police, building inspector, fire, all, same inspections would have to go along with getting this outside seating permit.
Madam Chair, Justin Post just sent me a message saying that a site plan showing outdoor seating layout for the team to evaluate is what would be needed.
Yes, good.
Courtney, I do have another thing to add.
You and
Okay.
Justin both have your hand up, so.
Yeah,
Hillary, did you want to go?
Yeah, I also think a tent permit would be required through the building department unless they're waiving that.
No, tent permit is needed too.
Okay.
I'm gonna write that down.
can I speak, Courtney?
Hey,
It's up to Janet.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two things that haven't been brought up. Janet, very good point about the tracing. And can we have in the permit a requirement that at least one person, and often this can be done through the credit card, you know, somebody's credit card, but that at least one person has to provide contact information. That's the first thing. The other thing is, where do food trucks stand in all of this? In other words,
Yeah, we know what you mean. So at this point, no food truck has come to us for permission for the year.
Right.
So,
but I've had, Madam Chair, I've had some questions from food truck people. And I think it might be good, given that then people take and sit outdoors, but it's not about seating that we permit. Anyway, what do we all think about having it required, to get back to Janet's very good point, to have it be required that one party at least give contact information?
well, it's
What do we-
really important.
Madam Chair, may I speak? It's Kathleen. Am I unmuted?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is getting a little convoluted, and I agree with Hillary that if the governor, in fact, adds that to more stringent guidelines, then we can include it. But I'd like to go back to what Mr. DeVasto said. Making this motion today would set in place the guidelines, if you will, for our local establishments to go forward. All of this is going to be done on the fly as of June the 8th. If they've got this in place, they know what they need to deal with. I'm only going to add that if we could make the motion today, that I'll add that it be in keeping with the governor's guidelines. As I read the motion, it's pretty tight and it's pretty well written. I don't have to, enumerate how well a job that Chief Pauly's done on this motion, but I think, I think that we're getting a little convoluted in the conversation over this.
Okay, well, I would like to include contact tracing because I know it's going to come in. But you can also make a motion because it'll have to be when we reconfirm it after the governor speaks.
Right, so I have in the motion a section where it's in keeping with the governor's guidelines.
Okay. Is everyone ready for the motion? Yes, go ahead. Go
I
ahead,
move
Kath.
that the board create an emergency measure for the 2020 calendar year to allow restaurants in the town of Wellfleet the ability to create new or expanded outdoor dining space where practical, feasible, and safe as follows. As printed in our in the motion. In addition to that, I am adding a section that says in keeping with the governor's final guidelines.
Is there-
Helen, second.
Helen seconds. Okay, all in favor, voice vote.
Helen, I.
Kathleen, I.
Christina, I.
Michael, I.
And Janet, aye. Motion passes unanimously. As we move on, I'll just say to Helen that food trucks really aren't on the agenda, but that
Right.
they also can't be on town property because you guys voted to shut down town property till the end of the year. So that will have to be a bigger agenda item. Okay. Moving on to neighboring communities. Anybody want to lead with that? Mr. Hort want to start? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. So I will say that on Monday morning, there is a Cape Cod Selectmen's and Counselors Association meeting. And this is what we were discussing. With the topic really for a month has been, can the Cape send one cohesive message to our governor? That we all support one letter with a number of goals. And with all the different towns in the Cape, not all of them were represented yesterday, but we couldn't come up with one decision, one letter. So we could talk about it at our next select board meeting, but we should define for the governor what we do want to support and what we need. And one person said very wisely, the governor knows that we need monetary support. We need tangible support also. So that we can keep in mind for next week. But everybody's pretty much doing the same, you know, signs at the beach, closing down some of the beaches, waiting for the government short-term rentals. Does anybody have anything else to say about neighboring communities?
Madam
Mr.
Chair, if
Hort,
I could
you
insert
may.
myself just for a second.
Yes.
So what we do is we find out, when we find out that other communities are doing certain things, is we're going to continue to give you the information of what other communities are up to. We don't need to reinvent the wheel a lot of times.
Yeah.
We don't have to do what our neighboring communities are doing, but the more we can have a unified approach on Cape Cod, I think the more it benefits us all.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I will say most everybody is on the same page. It's just that it's in the details. So is that all you want to say about neighboring communities? Mr. Hort?
Yes, that's all for me. You do have some selectmen who wish to speak, so.
Yes. Who's up for speaking on neighboring communities? Anybody?
Kathleen?
No?
Okay, your hand was still up. Helen?
Yeah, just briefly, to add to what Dad said, we can also lead the way. We should, you know, wait to hear what they're doing, try to coordinate, but we can have our own ideas and bring them forward before they do, obviously. Thank you.
Okay. So unless there's anyone else, we can move on to the governor's
Well,
reopening. Oh, somebody else has a hand up.
Justina and Mike. So Justina.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put my, go ahead.
That's okay. I know there's been significant concern on short-term rentals from Eastham. And
Okay, go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
There have been similar concerns from our neighboring communities of Eastham and some others on possibly trying to slow down how much summer rentals we do, but we have heard from the governor and Julian Sear and Sarah Peak about the need to be a unified statewide plan falling in with the governor. So I will say we aren't alone in certain concerns, but as everybody faces the COVID challenges and balancing them against the economy, I'm not sure how relevant these concerns in our contiguous towns about the swell in summer population from hotspots and what can be done because the governor's regulations are now out.
Anyone else?
Mike and Hillary.
Okay, Michael?
I was just noticing the employee health guidance document that Dan had put on. I think Dan posted this on our agenda for the town of Brewster. It seems to be really comprehensive. I don't know if we have anything published like this, but you know, looking through all the ones that he posted from the other towns, I feel like the Brewster one is really concise and has really good protocols for town employees as they sort of reopen their facilities. And I was just wondering, you know, do we have plans to make something like this, or do we have something like this in Wellfleet? I don't think we do yet, and I think it'd be in order to get this, get something like this printed. So I don't know if Dan wants to speak to that.
I do.
Next online, Hillary has her hand up. I'll let her address it first if she would like to, but I personally think it's something that we could almost take verbatim and have for the town of Wellfleet as well.
The Brewster one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's important to note that we did have a department head meeting last week, and each department is a little bit different, and the needs are different, and the spaces are different. And each department is working on their own plan to address COVID and the public coming in. And most, if not all, departments have something in place. So it might not be uniform across the town as to how everyone is going to handle it, but each department has something that it sounded pretty good. So we are all working on that, and we have something in place. The other thing I was going to say, as far as communities, Truro Health Agent and I are hosting tomorrow at 9:30 with the Chamber team meeting where folks can come in and ask a question, sort of like the Coffee with an Officer program. We're hosting that tomorrow at 9:30. If anyone's interested, shoot me an email or give me a call and I can get you the link to that. We haven't released the link yet, but it is going out to our chamber partners in both Truro and Wellfleet.
Thank you.
Hello, Janet?
Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so I was going to bring this up later in the last agenda item, since Mike's done it already and it was allowed. One of the things that I think we might include in our advice to, our guidance to staff, and I'm very concerned that staff is able, A, not to get sick, and B, to keep functioning in that order. Because the town has already been, the function of the town has already been, you know, very much changed by this, obviously. One of the things that's happening right now is that different people are relaxing their standards for sheltering and self-isolating. They're going out more, and in 2 cases, I'm not talking about staff now, I'm just talking about the many people I know who have been very careful for months. 2 of them have been at dinner parties indoors. And the degree to which various people on the staff are choosing to expose themselves to more groups and so forth, I'm not sure we can have rules about it, but if we draw up a sort of a guidance document for staff, I really think that that should be mentioned because, for example, if I were sharing an office with somebody who chose to feel less concerned about group, you know, gatherings, whether it's 10 people or 20 people or 4, I think that it should be discussed because every time that happens, given that a lot of people are asymptomatic still, I think it should be discussed and weighed. You can't forbid it,
Okay.
but
so
I, for example, just let me say, Janet, please, thank you.
so
I,
we're
for
not- the
I'm not
subject
going
one is
to a
what
dinner
other towns
party
are
or
doing.
a gathering now for the, you know, foreseeable future. Thank you.
Okay, so that's not the agenda item we're on. We're still on what other towns are doing.
But Michael brought it up, which is why I added it now. Thank you.
Well, no, he brought up what Brewster we had in our packet. And that he liked the Brewster guidelines and thought that the other departments in our board should adopt something like that. So, but that's, you know, that goes along with everything we'll be talking about to just being smart and being considerate. Okay, are we, who's that?
Michael,
Okay,
can I just speak really quickly just to address what Hillary had said?
yes.
So I understand each department's going to be working on their own guidelines, but I think this guideline from the town of Brewster is a baseline guideline really that is that really should be followed by every department. And if other departments want to have stricter guidelines, then I think that would be okay. But I think town-wide, this seems to make sense on every level. I mean, there are exceptions for people who are working in offices by themselves to not have to wear a mask unless there's 2 or more people sharing an office. I just think that it's important for the town to have some uniform guidelines, and some of the other towns have a stricter guidelines in place for the whole town. The Brewster one seems like a very good baseline guideline about, reporting to work. If you have like any symptoms, the protocols you have to do in contacting the health department, what's expected of you, to use common sense, and to remain home in order to limit the spread of illness. It's just a very comprehensive but very baseline guideline that I really feel that the town should have apply to all departments. So that's my 2 cents on that. And I understand if departments want to, go further than that, but this seems like I don't see anything in here that wouldn't apply. It shouldn't apply to every department. That's all.
So maybe Mr. Hort, who's just raised his hand, but he could just email these guidelines to every department and they can take a look at it. But Mr. Hort, is your hand up?
My hand is not up, but yes, I was going to do that. So to give every department a basic guideline, like Mike said, so.
And I'll also add that Governor Baker has put, like a couple weeks ago, the state has developed posters, signs for every restaurant, every business about cleanliness guidelines, mask wearing, social distancing, and that every business, including Town Hall and DPW, which they're already doing all these good things, has to have certain things posted, certain cleanliness guidelines posted, not just read, but posted. Okay. Anything about neighboring communities?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Hi. Since we're talking about the Brewster document, which I agree with Mike is excellent, the reason I brought up what I brought up was to have that included as a proposal to hear what departments feel about that, and it tags onto the necessity for being able to trace. In other words,
yeah,
social behavior, which is changing even as we're sitting here meeting. Social behavior is changing in relation to this, and people are being less careful. And for staff to be able to just be conscious of who they might have been exposed to is very important in our document. So I love the Brewster document. I agree with Mike, but I think that should be an addendum. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, moving on to short-term rentals. Anybody want to start? Mr. Hort, do you want to start with that?
Just what I'll start out with is that last week I sent an email to town council and just asked for them for clarification on what options are available to the select board. She has not responded yet. I think she was busy with the governor's latest thing, but I expect to have it by next Tuesday's June the 9th meeting. I think her concern from the questions that she asked me was if you do not regulate short-term rentals now, is it a violation to just say you're going to limit the amount of time that they can be rented? And is it an illegal discrimination in a sense if you don't treat all short-term rentals, which could be considered your hotels, bed and breakfasts, guest houses, if you treat them differently than you do when somebody's renting a house? So I don't have a response from town council yet, but I will have it by next Tuesday's meeting. In a conference call with the chamber, the concern was expressed that the town has been talking about limiting or, requiring a minimum stay for short-term rentals, and that's kind of leaving everybody hanging. So they would really like to see us make whatever decision we're going to make it now so that everybody knows how they can proceed for the summer. So at the very latest, I'll have something for you next Tuesday, June 9th.
And I'll add that we're still waiting to hear from the governor, you know, but I agree that it's got to be hard to wait, so. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yes, I have your hand up.
Christina had her hand up first.
Okay.
Justina?
We did have a visit from Julian Sear and Sarah Peak at the Select Board, who emphasized the necessity for individual towns like Wellfleet to follow the governor's guidelines. So I think I anyway heard that message loud and clear, but I still, I think the pressures on the governor and our elected representatives were considerable to balance business and health. I personally feel we may want, in the conscience of the community, to think about, is there anything we can do as short-term rental owners if we have an opportunity to rent for longer periods, which I know from realtors are saying there is demand, to let people who want to cancel out of their reservations. And if short-term rentals owners have the opportunity to rent for longer stays, maybe 2 weeks, I think that would be beneficial to the community. We are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and our rental community draws from hotspots. There was an Imperial College of London study that showed there's approximately 900 active infections from New York, Boston, Connecticut, New Jersey. And so as our renters come, God forbid, some of them may be asymptomatic but infectious. So slowing down the number of unique visitors that come is good for our community. And it is difficult to do business as usual in the middle of a pandemic, but it is also an economic hardship for those trying to make it. So that's my views, and to say we all love our town. And for those of us that own short-term rentals here, perhaps could ask themselves, is there anything I could do to do my part by my community, and to see if they can juggle their rental schedule if they have open weeks to favor the longer term weeks. So then we would be in accordance with the governor's published guidelines. We'd be honoring what Julian Sear and Sarah Peak have asked us to do. But as good Wellfletians, we'd also be seeing if there's anything at all we might do to serve our community during this global pandemic.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, we do have quite a few hands up, Madam Chair, so I'm going to let Helen go first, and then Michael, and then Hillary, and then we have a couple more.
Okay.
I've spoken with more people and gotten more mail, as some of us have all gotten more mail. I maintain my position that I'd like to leave it up to the property owners. Again, there are people that have just decided not to rent this summer despite what it does to their finances. And people are very conscious of the kind of cleaning they have to do in terms of the people I've listened to. And again, I believe that given the habits of the people who come and rent here in the summer, it is no way to restrict the numbers because of the subletting phenomenon, because of family and friends. But to get back to something Justina said, referring to what Julian, Senator Sear and Representative Peak said, we really need to be in line with what everybody else on the Outer Cape is doing. And, you know, that includes waiting for the governor to, you know, tell us what he thinks we should do, or his administration thinks we should do. Tracing is becoming more and more of a necessity. And documentation by property owners, required documentation for people coming through their units in whatever capacity, I would think would be very important. And also documentation of what they're doing in terms of cleaning, which is very easy. They need to do it for their taxes anyway. What cleaning service have you employed? what level of service are you paying for? You know, the deep cleanings cost more. And if you're doing it yourself, simply what your cleaning products are. I would keep all those receipts. I frankly keep cleaning product receipts for my studio cleaning, which I do myself mostly. So that kind of documentation, I think, is important if we're going to say, you can make it up for yourselves. We can't really control numbers by saying you can only rent for 2 weeks and nothing shorter. I really believe that's true. And I think that self-policing about this is something that's already going on. Last thing is, as we know, people have been doing short-term rentals starting early this spring because of the number of people who've wanted to get out of places. Anyway, thank you.
Next, Courtney.
Michael DeVasto.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that these have all been ongoing conversations with other towns in sort of trying to reach a consensus. These began before the governor issued the four-phase reopening guidelines and are continuing today. Obviously, we can't do anything on our own without our neighboring towns. But there's a few points that I'd just like to make about mobility and the relaxation of social distancing. And there's been, warnings all along about increased mobility. And just in the last week, there's been publications. And basically, according to the Imperial College of London, epidemiologists predict that an increased mobility following relaxation of social distancing will lead to a resurgence of transmission. And epidemiologists are saying not to get too comfortable with the new normal, because another wave could also mean a second lockdown. Also built into, this was published in the Boston Globe, built into Charlie Baker's reopening plan is something epidemiologists caution is not just possible, but perhaps even likely a return to the severe lockdowns of April and most of May. There's more quotes. The chances are pretty high that we're going to see the number of cases come back up, according to Samuel Scarpino of Northeastern University, a professor who specializes in infectious disease. So just as we're going forward here, I just want everyone to understand that these decisions are complicated and we're looking for consensus. These are conversations. My policy position only matters as one member of one board of selectmen on the Cape, but I'd like people to keep in mind that over half the population of Wellfleet is considered high risk, and epidemiologists are warning about increases in mobility leading to higher risks of outbreaks. Reopening is an experiment. We're in uncharted waters. All the issues involved in reopening are further complicated by the reality of living in a resort community. The residents who are part of the local workforce have to interact with the public, and each new time that they're exposed to a new group of people, it increases the probability that they're going to interact with somebody who may be infected with COVID-19. There's 35 million people that live within driving distance of Cape Cod, and we typically see over 5 million visitors per year just between June and September. And there are no simple solutions to these issues, but it's clear the pandemic's far from over. As we continue to have conversations about how to make the summer season successful and safe and an enjoyable experience for the people who visit here, please understand that the board is not trying to put undue burdens on the business community. We're not. This is a balance, a difficult balance between public health and economic activity. And, there's no decision going to be made on short-term rentals before the governor releases his guidelines. It's clear that there is not a consensus on the whole Outer Cape, and it's a difficult situation, but we know we don't need to be epidemiologists to understand that increased mobility is going to increase the probability that, someone carrying the virus is going to come through here. we essentially become a revolving door of travelers from all over the region. And I had a friend of mine who has an Airbnb that was it was unlisted, and her listing came back up because it was unlisted to a set period of time. She didn't realize it, and it was unlisted for 4 hours. She got 4 requests to book from Houston, Texas, New York, Washington, DC. And, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to, be fearmonger or anything, but the reality is that, the complications that come with reopening are compounded in a resort community. And that's what we have to deal with. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the best thing we can do, well, there's a lot of things we can do, but it's really important for everyone who has a rental, has a restaurant, has a business, and lives here. We really have to be clean, safe, and disciplined. Hillary, do you want to talk about the guidelines that you put up the other day on about what I want to say about registering and stuff?
I can talk about them here, but it really is under the Board of Health. So I think I would ask people to tune in or join the meeting of the Board of Health on June 10th. That's Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The meeting link is on the website. I think that's a better venue for that discussion. I would hate to have the discussion without them present, but the documents that the board is reviewing are up online. It's a rental registration program. We welcome any and all comments. Nothing is set in stone yet, so feel free to come and express how you feel to the Board of Health. They will take everything into consideration and hold the public hearing and alter documents as need be. So,
okay, good. And you could even at the following meeting or something, after your Board of Health, you could report back to this meeting or the other select board meeting. So we're getting a lot of mail about not wanting to register their rental. And I totally understand it. There's a lot of, Wellfleet the Cape has, after the whaling and fishing industry kind of petered out, or especially the whaling industry, people started renting houses and renting rooms. So there's a huge tradition, but this is one way that we can work with everybody to keep everyone safe. So, your room, your cottage, your house, your cottage colony, inspections may be needed. There are guidelines that really have to be followed. And I don't know where we're going to go with this. This is just new from Hillary, but it's something that you're going to have to do contact tracing with the people that are in there. And it's just going to be a different year where you might have to register. I'm just putting that out there. Who else has their hand up? I think
Kathleen.
Pam Grandin did, but go ahead.
Yeah, Kathleen first.
Okay. Go ahead, Kathleen.
I want to go back to the conversation with Dan Hort. We've been talking about this now for several weeks, and we did have quite a in-depth conversation with Representative Peake and State Senator Julian Sear last Tuesday. I want to point out that while this is out there, is the town of Wellfleet going to restrict rentals or do something different from the governor? What we heard loud and clear is that we need to we need to be thinking in terms of the region. And I hear our concern. We've been a small community. Our numbers are low for COVID. We've taken care of each other for the past 12 weeks. And I'm really, really hopeful, but this is how I'm built, that we will continue to do so. But if the town steps away from what the governor is going to recommend, segregate ourselves from the rest of the region, as stated by Representative Peake, we'll actually be causing more damage than good with regard to the health metric and the numbers. Because COVID, or this virus, doesn't stop at town lines. It has, as Justina said, it's global. What I'd like us to think about doing today goes back to Dan Hort. Let's make a decision that we are going to adhere to the governor's recommendations with regard to all rentals for the calendar year for 2020.
I don't think we have a choice, but I mean, I'm all for it. I don't think we have to have a motion or even a vote. We've been saying this all along, that we're going to wait to hear from the governor and do what he decides.
Well, I've written out a proposed motion, Janet, and I think proverbially, we would be taking away the gun we're holding to everybody's head if we just simply make a statement that we are, in fact, going to hang together as a region and adhere to the governor's guidelines or recommendations.
All right, does the rest of the board want to do that? Let's take a
Madam
vote.
Chair, may I speak to that, please?
Well, do you want to do that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I want to say something about it.
All
Yeah,
right.
so that, I like Kathleen's motion. I support it. But there is this other thing, which is we don't yet know if his recommendations will apply usefully to a resort community like the ones we have on the Outer Cape. And we should comply, in my opinion, with everything that the governor recommends. But we might want to have one or two other things given. And let's remember what Mike so usefully, provided in terms of data. We have a different situation than Western Mass. And I would like to comply with what the governor says, wait for that, and then see if there's anything we need to add, in our opinion, with the rest of the Outer Cape, for example. Thank you.
Yes. that
Madam
makes-
Chair, through you to Helen, can I respond? It's
all right.
Kathleen.
Yep.
I hear you, Helen, and I trust that's our Representative Sarah Peak and State Senator Julian Sear. As I said last week, they've got our back. They've got our back on this. The governor is not going to turn his head away from Cape Cod. He knows what we're dealing with. He knows the vulnerability we are in as a resort community. I have got to respect that people informing him are, yeah. So I have a motion written out, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Kathleen forgot to add what either Sear or Peak said at the beginning of their meeting. Yes, they do have our back, and they're vocal, and they're useful, and they're effective, but they are not on the advisory committee or board or whatever it calls themselves. And that was put out there right at the beginning of their part of our last meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so Kathleen, you can make the motion.
Okay, everybody, I move that the town of Wellfleet adhere to the governor's recommendations with regard to all rentals for the calendar year 2020.
Helen, second.
All in favor, say aye, voice vote.
Helen, aye.
Kathleen, aye.
Justina, unmute.
I'm working on it.
Michael,
I'd prefer, I couldn't unmute myself, but I would like to have a little bit of discussion about this before we vote on this motion. Like I'm not.
well, we've had a lot of discussion on it. This is just to right now approve what he's, that we will adhere to what he says. We can add to it also. We can make our own when he actually comes out with it.
But then,
I would agree with Mike. I'm not going to vote for something I haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to even consider this motion before it was read aloud to me. Also, we don't know what the governor is going to put forward. Why don't we wait until the governor puts it forward? We're not holding a gun to anyone's head. We're having conversations about things. We've made it clear that we're not planning on acting alone without the rest of the region. Frankly, the governor is not doing a regional approach, and we are not the same as every other region. And I don't feel comfortable saying, whatever the governor, we have the right to be more restrictive. I'm not saying that we're going to do that, and I'm not saying we should act as a town alone, but I don't see the need to sort of blindly put our faith in what the governor does. He's not doing a phased approach like the governor of New York is, where he's opening certain areas in different ways. This is a one-size-all approach that Governor Baker is taking to the state. Senator Sear said Southeast
Okay, Mike, I
Massachusetts.
got it. So you vote no, right?
Well,
So you can vote no.
I'm not ready to vote on it, is what I'm saying.
Change the amendment, but
Madam Chair?
no, I want to hear from Justina. We've already taken votes. There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. This is very important. It wasn't in our packet. We had no discussion. I agree with what Helen and Mike said, and I think that we've given plenty of verbal signals that we plan to abide by what the governor said, but I'm not comfortable voting on something I haven't even seen, and I don't think there's any harm waiting till we see what the governor has put forward before we vote on it. I'm used to reading what I'm voting on.
Okay, I agree. So you vote no. So there's
Yep.
two yeses, there's a motion on the table.
Madam Chair?
Have the motion reconsidered. And again, I said at the beginning, I don't think we need a motion for this. I think we can just agree right now to adhere to what the governor has presented right now. We can just
Madam Chair, a question through you to Dan. Dan Hort? Hi.
I'm
So
here.
my understanding of what we get from the governor is that we have to do it. That is why I voted for Kathleen's motion. In other words, I would like to be on record as a board so that the other Outer Cape communities can see where we stand, at least about that. But Mike and Justina, what I was saying is, just as we can with zoning bylaws and other regulations, we have to comply with what the state requires, but we can be stricter. And therefore, if what comes from the governor is not tailored to our Outer Cape needs, we can, at that point, do something stricter. But my question for Dan is, are we not required legally to do at the very least what the governor publishes, what the governor puts out?
Yes, that is correct.
Which is why I voted for Kathleen's motion.
But the motion, to what I understand, is that we will not do anything stricter than the governor, that we will not take any actions that are stricter than what the governor said.
No, it doesn't say that.
It doesn't
Well, we
say
have to
that.
follow the guidelines, so why do we need a vote? I mean, we're not going to do anything looser.
So I think we
We'll
can,
take a vote
vote to change the motion and just say that we could take a vote to say, presently, we support the governor in his plans. I mean, that's really all we have to do right now. He may come out with different, he's not going to even make a decision on short-term rentals until the end of June. So I think the idea is that we do support them. It gives people here an idea that we are supporting what the governor says and are not going to make up things on our own or change things. So what if we just rescind the motion and then agree to support the governor?
Madam Chair, I believe that Kathleen's motion supports whatever the governor comes out with.
That's what the
And-
motion says, Janet.
Can
Yes,
you reread
and-
the motion?
But what Mike and Justina say is their concern, and my concern too, is that we're now voting for whatever Governor Baker comes out with, and we don't know what he's going to come out with in a week. So that's their point. Okay? You get that? That we
Right,
don't-
but you
change-
know, you know, legally, we're bound to adhere to his recommendations anyway. We can make
Yeah.
them stricter. I'm not asking them to make them less. I'm just saying that we're going to adhere to his recommendations.
We have to.
Yeah,
But
I
saying
agree.
you're going to adhere to his recommendations is saying that you are not going to enact anything any stricter. I mean, we're binding ourselves to what the governor is going to do. Yes, by voting that we're going to do that in some way. We can change our mind later, but what's the point? We don't know what he's going to put forward. So why would we bind ourselves to whatever the governor is going to do, which is how I understand the motion to be read, that we're binding ourselves, we're committing to
Yeah.
do whatever is going to happen without knowing what's going to happen. I can't vote on that.
Yeah, I don't think so I would agree that we don't need a motion, but I might take a motion to end this topic. So, is
Madam
there a-
Chair, may I interrupt for 1
you
second?
may, you may.
So what the motion before you says is that you would agree to adhere by the governor's recommendations. It's not saying anything else other than that. So, and we don't have any choice. So whether you make a motion or you don't make a motion, we will adhere to the governor's recommendations. You have another meeting a week from today on June
Yeah.
the 9th, and the governor is expected to issue his recommendations prior to June the 9th. He's going to do it no later than the 8th. So you can discuss this again if you so choose next Tuesday on June the 9th.
That's what I would prefer. I don't think we need a motion today. So I will vote with, I'll forget everything and I'll vote with Mike and Justina and say no. And we'll wait to hear next week what we'll do after the governor speaks. So.
Madam Chair, we have a formal vote process. Kathleen and I voted, Kathleen's voted, you just voted no, and maybe we hear formally
Mike
from just.
have voted no also. So 2 for, 3 against, motion does not pass. All right, moving on to the governor's reopening plan. If there's any comments, otherwise I would wait until we hear more about the governor's reopening plan. But if people know about it and want to say something, please do. Anybody want to say anything about it?
I mean, people have, Suzanne has her hand up. I'm gonna just unmute her and see if she has any.
I got to go to the other thing. Okay, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you. Janet, I just heard you say, I believe that the governor isn't going to say anything about short-term rentals until the end of June.
He is not going to allow them. At his last point, he wasn't even going to open, that's phase 3.
Okay, so
No.
right now, the board has voted in a previous meeting to allow only resident stickers to be sold and used at the beaches through June 20th. Do we need to change that to language that includes until the governor changes? Do we hear from the governor? I've been telling, it's been on the website for a month and it's June 20th. So I'd like to get some clarification, maybe at next week's meeting, about what language we should change that to, so people are very clear when they look at our website looking for visitors, beach stickers.
Yes, he usually does his press conferences around noontime. So we should have all that information by next Tuesday night's meeting, or most of it.
All right, so I will email
The
Courtney
agenda.
and Dan for a place on the agenda, if that's all right.
Yes, good.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Since we're on a different topic now, I'm not seeing anybody. There was a hand up from short-term rental discussion, but we're not talking about that anymore.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it every meeting. So we're on business plans for reopening. That's kind of been discussed. Does anybody want to add anything to it? Okay, and we previously talked about creation of expansion of outdoor dining spaces at first. Other recommendations and updates. Oh, I know. Go ahead. Who
Um,
had-
Courtney, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was going to go into topics for future discussion, but it can also come under F. One of the things that I believe the representative and the senator recommended was when we were discussing asking the legislature for a wider array of options for holding annual town meeting in the time of COVID-19. One of them said that we should send a letter to the MMA, the Massachusetts Municipal Association, and of course also copy our legislators, because we don't yet know if we'd want to have a Zoom meeting in October or a vote by mail, but we really need, and the many, many, many communities, municipalities all over Massachusetts that have town meetings, and we got a list of them from our future select board member, Ryan Curley, who did the due diligence and got a whole list of all the municipalities all over the state that have town meetings. We need to have an array of options to choose from in order to have our town meetings happen. And I would like at our next meeting to have a draft of a letter that can be sent to the MMA and to various legislators, particularly the committee who might be going over this, to ask for them to include the possibility of Zoom meetings and or mail-in voting for town meeting or anything else they can think of. I mean, our drive-in option wouldn't be so good in October, but maybe other communities have situations where that could be used in some way. And we need to do this now because that's the kind of thing they're working on. So thank you. Can we agree to have at least a draft of a letter to look at for our next agenda, please?
Helen, I will get some materials together. I've been sending you all the very detailed and important trainings and webinars that MMA has been hosting recently. They are hosting one this week about town meeting and election. I will send it again, and I will look for other documents where towns have also sent letters to MMA and anything MMA has already done. So yes.
I'm talking about our own letter that could be
I will work
drafted.
on something once I find something else, unless you want to write it and send it to me as a draft.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Madam Chair, we have a few hands up. All right, Lara Henry, I'm going to let you go ahead.
Hi, Madam Chair. My name is Lara Henry. I'm the Executive Administrator for the Wellfleet Chamber of Commerce. And I think I may have a correction to a discussion that we were all just having. I believe that short-term rentals are going to be allowed starting in phase 2 with restrictions. And phase 2 may start as early as Monday, this coming Monday, which is June 8th. And the governor is expected to make an announcement on Friday as to whether or not June 8th is going to happen or not. So I don't believe it's the end of June. I think it's going to happen pretty quickly in about a week, depending on what happens on Friday, whatever he announces on Friday.
Okay. I think he's going to announce on Friday. Okay, so that's why I said we could discuss this at our meeting on Tuesday night.
Okay,
So-
I just wanted to correct that because I'm pretty sure that's the timeline. I don't know if you're expecting something else to happen on Friday, but that's kind of what he's been telling all of us.
Okay, good to know.
Okay.
And if Mr. Hort's there, there have been people like Dan, Mike, Mia, who have been, and a number of other people in town who have been looking at where and how we can hold town meeting. And there is a lot across the Cape doing it, trying it, but it is not working as well as they thought. And there's the whole thing of the main thing right now is how do you say no to somebody who shows up and they're a resident and there's not room for them. So there's a lot to this, but I'm sure, Mr. Hort, do you have any update on that?
No, it's what I would say is that at this point, we don't have any options other than an in-person meeting. So if something comes up that gives us another option, whether that's mail-in ballot, whether that's a virtual meeting, then we can be prepared to discuss that. But right now, we don't have any options other than an in-person meeting.
Okay. But should we put that on our agenda for next Tuesday?
I think it would be good to have it on there. I'm also going to bring something forward to you next Tuesday that different actions that we'll need to take, that if we do not have a town meeting by June the 30th, then you have to take certain actions as far as the budget for FY21.
Okay. So is Suzanne, okay, are you comfortable with that, Helen?
Yes, and I will attempt to draft a simple letter following the suggestion of, I think it was Senator Sear.
Okay. So Suzanne, are you still on the line? Okay, we can put this.
I am on the line.
Okay. With my meeting on Monday morning with the Cape Cod Selectmen's and Councilors Association, everybody agreed that for the increase of visitors coming, the best thing we can do is have a lot of signs. And I did go around to all the beaches this weekend, and the only sign I saw was keep social distancing, nothing about wear a mask if you can't social distance. I did not see anything like going down to the beach this way, come up that way. Please do not block the entrance. And even in town, businesses should be having, as Governor Baker says, businesses should be having these posters about safe distancing. So I don't, I know it's still early, but we do need signs.
As soon as I got the PDF file from Hillary, who got it from the county group, so there'll be consistent signage across the Cape beaches, I ordered 24 signs. They have not been delivered yet. So please stand by. Everybody in the whole world wants lots of signs. So I think the sign people are a little bit slower than.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And even, a sign at town hall, when we had the march on Sunday, there's no sign. So good. Thank you. I knew you were on it. And I just wanted to express to people out there that the visitors really need the signs too. All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Helen.
Thank you. And through you to Suzanne, I'm assuming that there's some link to the protocol when people go to get their stickers, right? On that website, is there?
Hang on. Go ahead.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I'm sorry, Helen. Could you repeat your question?
Sorry about that. I wish that would stop.
Whose phone is that?
No. So anyway, what I said was on the website for getting beach stickers, dump stickers, is there a link to the beach protocols?
No, there isn't. That's a very good suggestion, and I'll put it up today.
The second thing is, when I was talking to one of the property owners who rents, who had contacted us actually, but I got back to him as an individual, I said, I really hope that when you're doing the transaction where you're getting a sign up for a rental with a party, that you electronically send them the beach protocols, because the number one thing people do when they come here is go to the water. And also just to have handouts or something posted like they do in hotel rooms in case of fire, right there about what you do on our beaches. So not just signs at the beaches, but handouts, electronic communication from people who rent to people, and just to cover it in all possible ways, because not everybody understands, like the other day at Long Pond, that they have to be 12 feet apart if they're stationary. There were about 30 people there was no social distancing, and I didn't go to it. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yes, Kathleen.
Kathleen, point of order, Madam Chair. Would you agree with me that we are now on topics for future agendas?
No, but I would like to say, if you've ever got a phone or TV, something going, please turn it off because you're interfering with it.
It's Suzanne's workers in the background at the beach
Oh,
office.
sorry. I'm sorry, Suzanne. Okay, sorry. Okay, yes, we're talking about future agenda items, so.
Okay, so I have a couple.
Okay,
To our emergency and safety personnel, Chief Hurley and Chief Pauly. If on our next emergency management team meeting with the Board of Selectmen, could we have a discussion about emergency evacuation plan in the event of extreme or severe weather during COVID? You know, this is a concern now because the Cape is going into hurricane season. And I'd like to know that there is a plan in place for our most vulnerable residents as to how we're going to take care of them. My second concern, possibly for our next emergency management team meeting, is the opening of town buildings. When are they going to be, well, with the exception of the library and our human services building at the COA, stuff like the Shellfish Department, the Harbor Masters Department, Board of Health, Building Department. One of these offices open at least, you know, on a regular daily basis to the public. So we could have a talk about that as well. Thank you, Janet. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Anyone else with future agenda items?
Yeah. It's Michael.
Yep.
So beach sticker visitor passes, we're gonna have to address. That's gonna have to be on the next thing. I know Suzanne already brought that up. But you know, we can't have, you know, nothing going on if we're having short-term rentals, whatever the governor's guidelines, we're gonna have to, you know, do something with stickers for visitors. Beach fire permits, I know there's been restrictions on the beach fire permits from the guidelines from the state. I know every, you know, they're just guidelines, they're not requirements. So I'd like to talk about that. I don't know if that's just our decision or it's just up to the beach department to decide that. But I wouldn't mind having a conversation about it if we have any influence over that. And then the short-term rental registration. I'm not sure if do we have to approve that policy, I would assume.
It's a Board of Health regulation.
Sorry?
It's a Board of Health regulation. So they are having the public hearing and it's their regulation.
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen does not have to approve it.
No.
Okay, that's fine. We don't have to talk about it, I guess then. And then I was gonna mention the budget. Do we have to do something about the budget? But Dan already brought that up, but maybe it needs to be put on the agenda. Because I think we can act on it until, because we're gonna have to do it if we
Yeah.
go past the 20th. So it seems like we need to put that on the agenda.
Okay, anyone else for a future agenda, future discussion? All right, hearing none, may I have, a motion?
Janet?
What, Helen?
Hi, so can we have a brief exchange about food trucks' use of town property in cases where they would like to do it? Specifically,
All you have to say is just a topic for future agenda. So food trucks and on town property. We'll
that's
just
what I said.
discuss it. Yeah, you don't have to get into discussing it.
Justina?
I didn't.
I'm sure you already have this, but short-term rentals and passing the governor's recommendation with any other points.
Okay. Very good. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn this meeting, Madam Chair.
Is
Helen
there-
second.
Okay, All in
Ellen,
favor?
aye.
Kathleen, I.
Justina, I.
Michael? Okay, and Janet, I. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Michael,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Courtney, for such a
everybody.
well-run meeting.
Thank you. Take care.
We're getting good at voting.
Yeah.
Nice.